So thank you all for being here. Thank you so much. It's great to see you, and I feel privileged to be here. And today I'd like to encourage you to participate if you have questions, if you want to, unless it gets too rowdy, which I doubt. Um, it helps me, and thank you so much, Rita, for inviting me and for that introduction. Uh, I've kind of gone underground to do painting for the last year, and the way I did that was to go to the community college in Santa Fe and have a studio. It was wonderful to go to work, and really wanted to take advantage of that. And so other than IAPS, I mostly have been working in oil or acrylic. I teach in a strange way, I'm told, that it's not the medium that's important, it's what you're saying and how you do that. That being said, I think it's good to focus on one medium and get all you can out of it. So when I really got introduced to pastels, can you all hear me, by the way? If anybody can't, yell out or raise your hand or something. So when I was introduced to pastels, I was lucky enough to have nice sets of pastels, but I had a really difficult time painting because all I saw was the color. It was like a candy store to me, and I love color. And but the paintings all kind of seemed to be bland. And what I realized was that I was not seeing color as a value, as light or dark. And so I've worked out ways, both in oils and pastels, to kind of overcome that. I used to say I was retarded, and then somebody said that's not okay to say. So I say I'm challenged when it comes to values. And so I kind of break down approaching a painting, and what I'm going to show you today is approaching it with light and dark pattern first, and then going into color. Now, to do that, I need to kind of explain. I had all those sets of pastels. I couldn't really be fluent painting, so I needed to organize them, and I'm not an organized person. I heard something at the meeting about very organized. I'm like, that's not me. But what I needed to do was to organize so I could paint. So it took a little bit of time, like about a half a day or something, and I organized by values first. A lot of pastel painters will have all their blues in a row and all their reds and all of that. But I found I needed light to dark, and then in each column I would put like yellows across the top, and then orange, and then red, and then purple. So I had warms at the top, cools at the bottom, and then at the very bottom, and I'm trying to pick those out, I had at the time a set of new pastel grays, and it's light to dark in just a stick pastel, and I'm going to try and show you that. Once I get that pattern done, then I need to find the pastel that is light or dark in the color I want. And the trick here is to know that theoretically, if I'm working in shadows, I'm going to go to my second to the darkest tray. This all kind of came about because of the way the box I had was. And then I go to the lights on the second one down, so I have room for an accent dark or for a lighter color. Does that make sense? Yes. So the trick here is to see that there's no edge. And I know that's hard to, for me, sometimes it's hard to describe. And I do have a few things. I wanted to share this. After the IAPS, I started in my studio with this architecture painting, which I think, was coming along, and the chairman of the department saw it, and he goes, "Stop, don't do it anymore." So you can see my drawing as well. I just brought, and it's on a gray sanded paper. I like to use I loved Wallace. It's no longer available. I use Color Fix more than anything else. This is a Lacarte, and the nice thing about Lacarte is it's on a hard surface, on a hard cardboard backing. And this one I think is called Paprika, and I love that red for landscape that's green, green, green. If I'm working with the green, the red rock, like at Abiquiu or around here, the red rock, I like to use the Blue Haze Color Fix. And I notice there's some Color Fix brochures here. So I ended up, UArt is also a paper that I love. So I like sanded papers, although I've worked in others. The thing about UArt is that it comes in different grits. And so I can find a rough grit if I paint heavy. I don't want it to drift, to go down the page. I can get a rougher grit. They also have it in black now. It's this tan color. And this is a 400, 340 or 400 is what I usually use. But mostly I'm using these packets of different colors. And like I said, color is my thing. But what I needed to do was be able to see the light and dark. So these packets, I was using the cool packet because I tend to paint cool. And then I went, wait a minute, maybe I should put warm underneath. And so I kind of switched to using the warm colors underneath because I tend to go into blues and greens. Landscape is blues and greens. So to sort my box, this I got at one of the expos, probably at IEPS, but I don't know if it was this. But I have sheets of Color Fix in here. I have my pastel paper in here. And then it's interleaved with glassine so that I can store my, I paint plein air, and I agree totally, Nicholas. Plein air is a challenge, but it is so good to stretch. And I love just sitting outdoors and painting. This one I think was a demo. But you can see how I can store my paintings in here. Here's another one. This is in Chama. But I wanted to share with you, I just took a piece of this paper and I got all my pastels out, and then I started putting them in 6 columns and just visually. And then let me find it here. Sometimes I use an underpainting instead of working on a colored surface. I can use a wet medium if I want, but I prefer, I think, just to sit down and paint. You only have 2 hours outdoors, so this is how I would sort my pastels. Visually, I would start. If there's an edge between the 2 colors, it gets moved over. So if I put a dark one down like that, I would then want to find out where I could put it that I don't see an edge. It's a little trickier with bright colors. So like a red is going to pop out regardless. Sometimes you can use a colored viewfinder. Outdoors, a red viewfinder is great because it cuts the greens. Doesn't work on red rock. So you need a green one for the red rock.
Anita?
Yes?
Did you make that booklet?
No, this is Canson Mitentes paper, and occasionally I paint on it. The Canson is not sanded. It's got a laid finish so that when I paint on the front of it, it has little holes, sort of. Not holes, but so you can layer the paint. And there's some wonderful painters that work on Canson. I prefer the sanded. I prefer the back of the Canson paper. So, say I don't have a sanded paper in here that I want to use, I can use the paper that's in here. So and it comes in different sizes, and it's at the Art Expo, but they don't do that anymore either.
Just put the glassine.
The glassine's already in there.
Oh, okay.
It's all bound with the glassine in it. So then I just take my paper and put it against the glassine, so I can put two against the glassine.
So does it come with the glassine in place, or do you put it in there?
It comes with a glassine. I got a pad of UART that had glassine, and I was working outdoors, and it was windy. It was a March day, I think, and the whole pad started coming apart. It was like paper blowing everywhere. But this is like a portfolio, and it has worked really well. And I have a couple of different sizes, and I just keep paper and painting and everything. So this all went in a backpack. I have a little bigger one now. Any other questions? So how do you start with values? So let me move these out of the way so I don't trip. Oh, I wanted to suggest too, I came across this. It's multimedia. And I recently switched in oil painting to the production colors, the modern pigments of yellow, magenta, and cyan. So this is multimedia artboard pastel, and they have magenta and cyan, a turquoise color, and a yellow, bright colors, and I liked painting on it. This is a little one. But you can see how an underpainting or a toned surface can really add a lot to what you're painting. Any questions? So that's...
Were you saying that when you're setting up your value, that you're using new pastel grays to do that and then adding the color over it?
That's what I'm going to do today. Now, the last time I did a demo, I think I can hold these up. Can you see how this is a value string of ultramarine blue? This is a value string of the complement orange. And I could start that way as well. Pick two colors, go light, mid-tone, and dark. I think I have 4 or 5 in here. And just start with a base coat. It's kind of Maggie Price a la, what's her name from Massachusetts? Yeah. She was teaching with this limited 3 values. And so you can use the colors, but what I'm going to do, and I have drawn from this photo, and it's Frenchie's Park up in Santa Fe. It's a place I walk, I've painted, I've taken workshops there, and so I know it. I know it. And this was, again, a spring day, and the clouds covered the mountains. It came in underneath, which just thrilled me. So I'm going to start and put some value. I have a very dark gray, and I have lighter grays, so we'll see how this goes. But so the darks are this upright. If you have... I'm going to try and stay out of your way here so you can see. And the hard pastel or the new pastel is handy because you don't fill up the tooth as fast. And there used to be a set of grays, like 10 from light to dark to black. And, I think you can still get them open stock or something. But I'm going to... and then the next darkest I have is here in the distance. And again, the way I like to start painting in any medium is to consider shape first. And I did the drawing. On the photo, I have a lot of foreground. I set the horizon low. That, to me, in landscape, it's where you put the horizon that makes the painting or doesn't. And so I didn't want as much foreground. I wanted more sky and mountain. So I set the horizon lower than what's in the photo. But I do like those dark uprights. John F. Carlson, I think, is that right? Frank, what's the name? Landscape painting. He's got so much information. Old book, but it's out by Dover. So I'm not concerned with this. My first thing is shapes. And then I consider value, light and dark. Where's my light and dark pattern? So now I need to kind of go, let's say this is that's a purple. Does it show on there?
Yeah, yeah.
I was having trouble figuring out what was light gray and what wasn't. So within my box, I have all brands. I have hard and soft, and the Rembrandts say soft, but they're not. They're midway. A soft is a Terry Ludwig, a Sennelier, a Schminke. Those are really soft. I like to use the harder ones first if I'm in the studio. If I'm outdoors, I just paint. So I have a mixture in there. I've got values first, then color, and then its intensities are mixed in there. And what I learned when I sorted my box was that brown and gray tell you nothing. You have to look at that brown color and go, what's the color? And I had to go take workshops to figure this one out. What's the color under the color? And so you look at that brown and you go, is it mostly orange? Is it mostly green? Is it mostly blue? It's a low intensity color. And so it's important, it was important for me to really be able to see those as colors and what section do they go in. And then also it helped me with warm, cool. That was another tricky thing. I was like, what in the world are they talking about? And, I studied with Dan Green too, and I think he's a master of pastel, was. And he said, there's no such thing as a cool red. And I'm like, really? But Cezanne and Monet, they both taught us how you put warm, cool blues together and it vibrates. It's very exciting compared to just the local color. So it's more than, green trees and blue sky. I can use, in theory, any of these colors as long as the value's correct and I won't get mud. So here I am with some scribbles, and let's see that's nice. I'm toning this down. Now both pastel and oil, it's easier to lighten than to darken. So I'm starting with my darks, and I'm going to soften edges. So I think I started with shape first, then value, then edges, and color is the last thing I work on, because I can change the color easily as long as the value is correct. The edges are where I'm going to get the viewer, I'm going to get my center of interest. Where do I want the viewer's eye to go? I have choices in landscape. I can, even though they say, distant or foreground, middle ground, background, if I play down the foreground, I want the viewer's eye to go to the background. That can be the most exciting or the most contrast. Wherever my center of interest is, where I want the viewer's eye to go, I want the strongest contrast, the brightest colors, the most detail. I want to really punch it. The viewer's eye will go. Now, there's kind of exceptions if you put an animal in there, if you put a structure in there, that, it's sort of automatically, that's your center of interest. But you still want to play it up and play down and soften edges away from that. So I have a choice here with, I'm softening edges because I want to go in with some other colors. And what I'm working now is light, mid-tone, and dark. Right now, the darkest here. I've got white for my lights. I'm working on white paper. If I wanted a color, I would go with a light color. Now, if I go with a mid-tone gray like I did with the architecture, that's a whole different kind of feel. If I go with black surface, anything mid-tone is going to look light. So if I'm painting on black and I get a mid-tone gray, it'll look like a highlight, depending on the situation. So in other words, it's all relative. And I can use a pre-prepared colored surface, or I can tone my own. I can put a bunch of colors in there, maybe use a wash with it, as long as the paper holds. Plein air, it's much easier to work on a rigid surface than a piece of paper. But most pastel papers, especially the sanded ones, are rigid enough that I can just, I would just sit on a rock and open my box. And usually I would paint oils to begin with. That takes more thought. Now the beauty of oil and pastel is that I work them in exactly the same way. The process is the same. So, lost my train of thought. Okay, it'll come back. I have to think about how to mix colors with oils. I have to choose whatever pigments I put on I want them to be similar properties. And that's why I use limited palette most of the time and add other tubes of paint. I would only take 4 tubes of paint with me, and it was what they call the standard palette or the impressionist palette, the cadmium yellow light, cadmium red light, ultramarine blue, white, titanium white. I painted all over with those 4 colors, and it was nice not to have to take 4 tons of paint with me. With pastel, you sort of have to do the same thing, only have a way to organize it, because I have 200 colors in here. But what happened is the pastels informed me on what was possible with oil painting, what I needed to do to mix. The oil painting showed me how to mix with pastels. So you don't need 4,000. You can do it with, like I say, it's about 200 in this box. And I have a bigger one in my studio, but I don't need a whole bunch of pastels if I know how to mix. And that I learned from oil painting, so they're beautifully compatible. Any questions? Let me do a little bit more here. So, I'm going to start with my second to the darkest and put in some color. I'm hoping you can see this. Yes, thank you. So I've got this beautiful mountain and the cloud coming in front of it. Have any of you used the pan pastels?
Yeah.
I kind of like the spongy applicator thing because it's more like a painting a brush. So I could be softening edges this way too. So I'm still in my darks here. I'm going to go into more of a golden color. This is winter chamisa, but I want it to be a little bit. But do you see? I don't know if you can see. There's very little value difference in there. In here. And if I use that, I tend to either have a lid or something to put my. What if I put a little of that here? Can you see an edge? I can see one there. That means it's darker than what I did underneath. So why do an underpainting and then change the values, which is what I used to do all the time. I go, oh, I love this color, and I put it in the wrong place. So it's really, for me, it's kind of a challenge to get out of the way here. Now, the other thing I learned is that I'm attending to shape first, then value, then edges. And so at this point, I might want to pick up, I've got clouds and I've got foreground, and I always love painting outdoors because I can go, which is lighter, the cloud or the ground? And if you've got a hill or something where you can like get down and compare the edges, you can compare, is there a hard edge? Is it similar? Which is lighter, which is darker? It's just a fun way to kind of test yourself, or, it's exciting to figure that out. So this is pretty light. Let me see. I'm going to come in with some of this. Oh, see, now I put it down and I've got white there, but this is my distant. Now, if the small foamy thing, pipe insulation, is too small, you can do this. Or you can use paper towels. I know what I was going to say. So pastel is every bit as permanent as any other medium, maybe more, because it just has the same pigments, but with gum tragacanth. So, like oil has oil and varnish and all kinds of stuff in with it. So what I learned is that a pastel is fragile until you get it protected, but it is pure pigment on the surface. So it's like little diamonds on the surface, and I think that's why I loved it so much. Is like, this is so exciting. Now, the more you rub it, the duller it's going to get. So I don't do a lot of blending or rubbing. I'm just kind of trying to speed it up a bit and to soften some edges. Now I'm going to decide that the clouds are a little bit lighter than the ground here, and then these are all uprights with this foliage in front. There's a chamisa and there's some other things with yellow. So I'm going to say that the sky is lighter, so I'm going to my second to the lightest. Ah, yes, that's beautiful. A little bit lighter. So I'm painting with paper towels and insulation foam. And why not, Now I'm using a hard pastel because I have all kinds in here to mix. And this is called feathering if you want to like put a glaze like I would in oil. I use a hard pastel and just use the edge to kind of blend in. It can change the color, it can lighten or darken. I sometimes use charcoal, because charcoal is transparent gray, and it'll push back if I get that distant mountain popping too much. I'll use charcoal over it, or I can darken an area with charcoal, and but you can still see the color underneath it. So, okay. So let's say I'm doing the clouds are going to be the lightest thing, and I'm going to, this is a terrible print of a photograph, and it looks like this cloud is bluer and darker, this lower cloud, and then the light on the upper cloud is very light. So I'm going to come in here with, now I'm purposely bringing it right next to the mountain because I want to look at that edge. I want to see, the mountain is darker than the clouds. and because the cloud has an underbelly and it's in shadow. And the fun thing about clouds is that if the sun is hitting the cloud, it's warm. It's a warm light. So you've got cool underneath. When you look at a cloud in the distance, you're going to see bluer, cooler, say a sunset or late afternoon. The clouds are going to be flatter. They're going to be more purple and more orangey, pinky orange. Above, like when we get those big thunderheads in the summer, the bottom of that cloud is overhead. It's going to reflect. If I'm on a green lawn, it might look green underneath. If I'm on red earth up at Abiquiu, it might be very warm underneath. So what happens is this warm, cool thing that overhead, the belly is warm and the light is cool, and it's cool and warm light on the top at the distance. That makes sense? I'm losing words. That's a good thing, though. That is a good thing. So I'm using a very warm white up there. You're probably not seeing it from the camera, but it is almost a yellowy, but it's white, but a tone. So I could even go into some color, and because that's the lightest thing in my painting, but I want it to have no edge on the white. Is that making sense? So there's a little bit of an edge, but actually the camera is kind of doing that. When up here, I don't see an edge, and that's the other thing about pastel that's fun, is if you push hard on a light pastel, it gets lighter. If you push hard on a dark pastel, it gets darker. So it's kind of like the pedal on a piano, that you can kind of make it brighter or duller, lighter or darker, just by the way you touch the paper with it. So for me, it feels a lot like clay work, like ceramics, It's like my hands are in there and I'm pushing and I'm moving around. And so it's a very, to me, kind of tactile way to paint, as opposed to oil paint. I'm going to get all the shine just the right way in an oil paint. Now I'm just softening that edge of the cloud. And then I'm going to go to this. I think this gray is going to be okay for, this is cloud again. And I think it's so exciting when the clouds do something interesting, like come underneath the edge of the mountain. Now, it's kind of, if that bothers me, I might take, and I'm pulling the pastels out, I might take this through a bit or soften the edges. Kind of peekaboo through. I don't like things to stop at an edge, like if I'm painting trees and there's light here, I want to take it to the other side of that trunk. So it looks like it's going behind it. Does that make sense? So think in terms at this point like orchestration, like I'm conducting all of these colors, shapes, strokes, and I don't want it all to be brass horns. I don't want all of the detail all over the painting. I want to keep it kind of, like a symphony would be. And so I'm going to go ahead and restate. I'm going to find a darker, my favorite colors, if that's true. Yeah. New Pastel 298p, bottle green. I've ordered a box of them. It's a good natural green. and I use it a lot to draw.
What's it
And
called?
it's 298p, bottle green.
Are you still able to order single colors?
Yeah, that's my question.
I think you can order them at Dakota, although I haven't used Dakota. But I actually
You
ordered them.
can't.
You
I was
cannot?
watching this, yeah.
You can't. I've been trying it, and they said they don't do single colors anymore. But if you found the secret trap door into
Yeah.
single colors,
I love, yeah, open stock. Artisan Quick Carry and open stock new pastel. There is Create-A-Color, and there might be something similar. I'm glad I ordered a box.
just
The other one I really love, and Sennelier used to have the best greens. I think Terry Ludwig gave him a run for the money. And Sennelier is kind of fragile, although the newly manufactured ones don't break quite as much, but I do keep the paper on Sennelier. But there's 179, I think it is, and it's like green but one off black. If I cannot get dark enough with this green, I go to that one. And it's nice to have, now Rembrandt, you can tell what the pigment is. They will say burnt sienna, right? If you're going with, seafoam green, you're kind of lost unless you can read those little letters. But,
I think
Yes.
Dakota put out a list of substitute pastels for those new pastels, substitute manufacturers and the color number from them.
great.
Because I don't think they make new pastels anymore, I'm not sure.
No, they do, but not
They do.
individually.
but only a cent.
But they aren't going
Oh,
to
I
sell
see.
them open
Oh, I see.
stock.
Well, anyway, if you go to.
Well, that's
Dakota,
good.
you'll find
That's
it.
good to know. And I was fortunate enough, I don't think it's still in print, but this one lady that I met, she had taken a workshop, did all the pastels, the different brands, and she did that Munsell color wheel. So you could, if you couldn't get this pastel, you could get any number of others. And I've still got that book. I use it as a reference, but I don't know that it's still available. But
What's the book?
I could get that information to you. I'll get it to Rita, and then she can pass it on. But the main thing is to, like, I have 200 colors, but there's ones that I use all the time. And then there's ones that are probably going to stay just about like they were in the wrapper or in the slot. If I'm using a set, I tend to just turn the pastels up so that I just easily flip them down and close the box if I'm using a box set. Now, the thing about box sets is that they want you to buy the pastels, so they're almost all, if you notice, the colors, the bright colors are in the midtones. These are not as flashy, but you need them to paint. Those are hard to even tell what they are, but you need that extra punch sometimes. So if you organize your pastels, what I found is you're going to see exactly what you're missing. Like I may be missing darks, or I may only have cool darks, and I don't have oranges and reds. And Terry Ludwig has two beautiful, one's like a burgundy and one's like a rust, very dark. And I love those colors too. So, but the main thing is to be able to work with what you've got, and you don't need a huge set if you know how to mix. And like I said, the value of the color is ever more important than the exact color. I can always adjust the color. And we all want good color, but to me it's the structure underneath that makes it hold together as a painting. It's like building a house. You've got to have those steel girders or the foundation, or else the house isn't going to stand. And you can put all the color you want. It'll be like tap dancing on the surface if you don't have a structure. Now, that's not to say that there aren't plenty of painters that do color statements, and it's all about color. And that's perfectly valid painting technique. But I wanted distance. Landscape taught me so much because first of all, there's so much out there. Took me about 2 years to figure out how to paint outdoors, because you get out of the car and it's like, okay, I'm in a beautiful spot, but what am I going to paint? And then it took me a long time. One thing I learned was I had a painting that worked, and it was dark trees at the top and a big foreground. And so it was like, wow, that one worked. Let me go do another one. So then I would look for something that had a dark at the top and a big foreground. Then I figured out, oh, what if I did dark at the bottom and a big sky? Do you see how, go with what works and do another one and expand on that, rather than trying to find the perfect scene or the perfect way to paint. Just keep painting. And lots of starts. Some of them will work, some of them won't. It's important not to get too, everyone's got to work, and if it doesn't work, I'm down in the dumps, and if it does, if I had a good day, I think my painting is good. If I was in a bad mood, it's like, oh, that's a terrible, and sometimes it's not that way. I need some objectivity, and I like to take paintings and have another artist talk to me about them, because we see things differently, which I love. Yeah, I had a job as a social service worker, and people were going, how do you know all this? Like I'd say, well, that person needs glasses and this person, and I'm like, how do you not know? Because artists notice things. And it's a thrill to go outdoors and go, whoa, look at that sky, or look at how this tree, like, there's a million trees out here, right? But there's some that every time I go by them, I'm like, I love that tree. There's, it's like only artists kind of know that it's got what I call the heart throb, or it knocks your socks off, and then the job is to keep that thread going. Okay, let me paint some more. Any questions, anything? So I brought in a brighter orange in here. Like I said, I'm really working on the newer colors. Let's see what I've got here. So I like to use more than one. Whoa, look how dark that is. Terry Ludwig's are the only ones that go on darker than they look on the outside. I think it's because there's more pigment. They're really gorgeous. But most pastels, see, that's got a definite edge, so it's too dark. I don't want it to be that dark. There's another one that's too dark. Now, if I don't have the right one, I can take white and lighten. So then it becomes more of, like a oil painting or something where you're just popping in color. So I'm going to go very lightly with this pastel, and maybe even and just because the local color of a sky is blue doesn't mean it can't have other colors in it. So really any of these lights could probably go in the sky. And it gets very exciting when you mix here's sky, but I'm going to use a very light green in it. Let me see if I can show you that. And it just depends. Often the sky will have oranges or yellows or greens at the horizon, and it's just effective light. So this is a kind of greenish color. I can, in theory, use any color I want as long as the value works. So we can be creative. Any questions? Anything you want to see or?
Anita, do you spray your finished pastels?
Thank you for asking that. I normally don't. My job is to get the right paper with the right application. And so what I do, if I finish this, I'll take it outside or somewhere. I'll tap it on the back. If anything falls, then I might spray it. But the way I spray it, this is my favorite. It's terribly expensive now, I'm like, but I hardly use it. So it's a Sennelier. This one's the Latour, and there's another one. They don't darken it as easily as like the Grumbacher. So I take this outside because it's smelly and you really shouldn't use it inside. I put the painting at an angle and I aim this up. First of all, I test it on the back or on something to see if the nozzle is clogged. Because if you don't, you may get big blotches. Then I go psst, psst, and it goes, except on a windy day. It just kind of lands on it. And I do that, a little bit, I'm not like spraying. I'm just letting a little bit of it land until it begins to kind of go dark. And then I stop. But I can't tell you, I use it so rarely. And this is Latour, but the other one has different satin, gloss, whatever, but I don't use a lot of it. So it's mainly just in case I have too much pastel on there. And I try to not have anything drifting, running down the paper. If I find I'm doing that, then I need to change the surface, the paper, find something else. Somehow I got a pastel stuck in there. So this is that green. I'm liking that. I'm thinking I'll go with, this is really yellow, orangey yellow. That's darker than I expected it. I don't know, it may be the light that I'm fooled. I'm fooled. But sometimes an unexpected color can really be exciting. Like I said, the easiest thing to change is the color. Now I got that nice line going across. Let me see if I can. It's getting there. I kind of like to do like puzzle pieces where you're comparing one edge. Where do I want the edge? Where do I want to... or do I want the accent, or do I want to soften an edge? So if I make a mistake, I don't try and erase. I would rather take another pastel, and if I'm working on a toned surface, I get the color of the paper. I get as close to what the paper is in in a pastel, and I'll use that to go over anything that I, an edge, or if I, if I have something I don't like, then I might come back in with, this is pretty white paper, but to kind of feather in some stuff. Now I'm going to add a little bit of fun. And this is, so basically I've got complementary orange and blue. Yes. Thank you. 10 minutes. Great. So I've got a very light purple, very light. What if I brought a little bit in to this foreground? Kind of fun, huh? And then this is the hard pastel. I'm just going to go over it. If I have this similar value, I'm not going to get mud. It's just going to change the color. So that's the trick, I think, to adding some unexpected color. And I like working complements. There's a book, oil painting, artist from New York, I think, upstate, that did yin yang of painting, and he does complements. So there's like yellow and purple. And you get all those muted colors in between. So that's why I wanted to show you that box. But it's kind of fun to experiment with. Let's see what color I can drop in there. Here's another one I'm hoping is, yeah, but it's pinker. You're not seeing it on the screen like I am, but it's adding another dimension here to this foreground. And I say I get too much purple in there, I can come back with the orange, and so you can kind of play back and forth with the hue, the color. And this is darker than the distant field, but now at this point I've got the whole surface covered, and that's how I was taught to paint, is to cover the whole surface and then do the detail, right? Well, in oil painting, once you get that whole surface covered, it is too wet to do anything else. And if you're trying to go back in with a dark something, it's not going to work. So, but at this point, I take my time, and I'm very careful about what detail. At this point, I may use a hard pastel to draw. I may push and pull, and I may put accents. So this is a chamisa. I'm going to go to my chamisa bright foliage color, if I can find it here. Say, and at this point, I'm really attending to the stroke. So I take a soft pastel and I roll it sometimes. I want to get some exciting detail, and a lot of that is accents. Oh. I got a set of, I treated myself and got a set of Giraud. I love those shirts. And the Rocher are even better. They're kind of like, you could get hard edges, but they're so full of wonderful pigment that they go on, and you can get an accent in there. That, I don't like that color. It could be the lights. I'm going to go back in there. Purple and green are good friends. But just to show you, it doesn't have to be the sky is blue, the great tree is green. It could, and now our juniper are orange. Thank you very much. Sneeze, sneeze, sneeze. Anything else? You've been so patient. I appreciate that. And
Give about 5 minutes approximately.
I got 5 more minutes.
Approximately, we can go over.
What shall I do? The camel, right, by committee. Question?
Can we see your training out setup? Is there a way to focus the camera on your training out setup?
Nicholas, is there a way to?
Yeah.
Of course, now I have all these pastels I've used. And what I do is I then get out my little 6 things and I just test them and put them in the right drawer. Or if I'm really lazy, I just put them in and do it later.
Sleeves are you putting on your tweed?
I'm sorry.
What type of sleeves and where do you get them?
Oh, I didn't bring any with me, but you can order in clear bags, or I get the ones at Artisan Crystal bags, and I have different sizes. And all of these these 9x12s are all done outdoors, almost all of them. There might be a demo or two. And the one in the frame, I just wanted to share with you. I ended up having, at that time, a framer back then with an edge, and then my oil paintings also had that kind of edge. I've forgotten what it's called now.
Can y'all see the setup?
Thank you.
Okay.
Who knows when that'll happen again? But it excited me, and I've used that. When I find a subject, I used to have boxes of photos and try and find the right photo. And I've pretty much gotten rid of most of them, but there's some that I keep painting over and over and over. And I like to work in series. So last summer I did a series from the Rose Garden in 4 mediums. I'm beginning in my class, I'm beginning to work clouds now. I want to do a whole study in clouds. Although this season I like clouds, although our monsoons are a different time now. So, but I like to do clouds in the summer. Or after, I call it active skies. It's, either before a storm or after a storm, to go out and really study clouds. It's really fun. I probably have paint on my face.
So the painting,
Tell me.
Do you always underpaint with the new pastel gray values, or do you ever work with color as an underpainting?
I mostly work with color because I'm working outdoors. I've got 2 hours. I just go for it. I don't go hard or soft. I just paint. And again, I go to the center of interest often because if you're on location, you never know if it's going to rain, somebody's going to run you off. So you want to, that's the beauty of plein air painting is, boy, you can't hesitate. You sit down and you start, and you get something, and you don't expect to get a finished painting. It's like, if I get something, I'm happy. And working on the colors helps me because I don't have to go edge to edge with the color. The color fix is my favorite now, since I like the grays because the grays, if I put it down and it's darker than that mid-tone gray, I know it got a dark. Because if you're putting a dark on white, you're probably going to have to strengthen that dark, like I did here. It was too light because I was relating it to white paper. Whereas if I have a toned surface, then if it's a mid-tone, I know if I put it down and I can see it, it's dark or it's light. So I get the value right away with a mid-tone. And I get the color better with white or light. Creamy colors are great because it's like sunshine. So a lot of plein air painters will use raw sienna or something underneath to get that sunlit feel to it. But the mid-tone is a great learning tool. And but for me, the color and adding that color dimension has been more and more important for me. Once I got strengthened in the area I was weakest in. I think go for what you're strong in first, because that'll keep you painting. This worked, I think I'll do another one. And you can catch up with the other if you have a weakness in drawing or, whatever. We all have strengths and weaknesses. And the thing is to have just enough of that weakness propped up so that you can explore your strength. I think I'm always going to be a colorist, whatever that is. And I'm going more and more to bright. I also have used, I think it's Golden, that has a set of neon acrylics, and I thin them down and do bright colors under and paint it on. As long as the paper or the surface it'll say wet media or accepts. If it says it accepts watercolor or something, that you can put wet media underneath and then dry. I did one with magenta and orange and something else, and then it did a snow scene on it. It was like so exciting.
Wow.
Went to Taos, it was 17 degrees. And luckily, I went 17 degrees, I'm not taking my oil, the degrees. And I took pastel and had a good time. And a friend that went with me paints in watercolor, and she's painting away and can see ice crystals. It was an adventure. Luckily, it warmed up the next day, but still. Plein air painting is an adventure in many ways. You know, it's so beautiful.
Yeah.